Welcome to another episode of National Divorce Talk Raw. This will be a short episode continuing our coverage about what a potential civil war in America could look like. Now, we have covered what experts think a potential civil war in America may look like, and we're going to look at a new analysis that says a civil war in America may be closer to the Italian Civil War of the 1970s than anything else. Is that true? Is that not true? We'll take a look at who those people are that are predicting that, what it means, and what it could possibly mean for California and the future. And we'll get right into that. But first, so I'm going to just get right into it. There was a magazine called Reason Magazine. They've talked about CalExit before in the past, and they've been covering the division politically in America over the last few years and how it has only grown and how it has not been fixed under the leadership of Joe Biden. Recently, they said that political division in America is basically at the levels that it was during what's known as the Anno dei Pombi, or the Years of Lead in Italy, roughly a period of the 1970s, where you had what's called a low-intensity conflict between the right and the left. And he's saying in this article in Reason Magazine that that's what a civil war in America is going to look like. So we're going to show you what he said, and we're going to show you the comparisons, and then you can make up your own mind. Again, we don't want a civil war to happen, but we do think that America's moving that way, and we do think that national divorce is a release valve for that pressure that would save lives and keep friendships. We'll leave it there. Okay, let's get right into it. So this is Reason Magazine. Political violence escalates in fracturing the U.S. Tensions won't simmer down until Americans stop fearing power in the hands of their enemies, by J.D. Tusil, 6/13/2022. They're talking about political violence is only getting worse in America. They're talking about there's the January 6th insurrection, but they're also talking about the ruling of the January 6th insurrection and also the Supreme Court. With the right and left at each other. Oh, here we go. After a week featuring a House hearing into the Capitol riot, the attempted assassination of a U.S. Supreme Court justice, the firebombing of an anti-abortion group, and the arrests of extremists apparently ready to rumble at a Pride Month event, it's fair to say that political violence is now part of American life. With the right and left at each other's throats, the U.S. resembles Italy in the 1970s, when ideologically motivated classes plunged the country into years of turmoil. Now, obviously, we've covered what a civil war may look like here. There was Andrew Yang talking to this expert. I can get it to pull up. Here's another expert talking about what civil war may look like. And yet even more experts talking about how they envision how the civil war may go. So National Divorce Talk Raw, experts predict a civil war. Why? We did that recently. So this is a backup or secondary piece to that one. So if you want to see what the experts are saying about a civil war is, you can watch that video. But basically what they said is it's not going to be large standing armies with guns running at each other like in the Civil War of the 1860s. It's going to be what's known as a low intensity conflict. Low intensity conflict is a military conflict, usually localized between two or more state or non-state groups, which is below the intensity of conventional war. It involves the state use of military forces applied selectively and with restraint to enforce compliance. Low-intensity conflict is defined by the U.S. Army as a political military confrontation between contending states or groups below conventional war and above the routine peaceful competition among states. It frequently involves protracted struggles of competing principles and ideologies. And this is what a low-intensity conflict looks like. And this is the Years of Lead. So roughly from the late 1968 to late 1988, basically the 1970s going into the early 80s, you had what was known as the Years of Lead, Anni Dipambe. And it was basically that you had some people on the far right who wanted Italy to become a neo-fascist state, and you had people on the far left who wanted Italy to become sort of a communist socialist state. And both sides, the left, the far left, and the far right, both felt that it was okay to shoot each other, bomb each other, and bomb civilians in false flag attacks in order to get the government to attack the other side. So let me just show you what a low intensity conflict looks like based upon the Years of Lead, Anni Dipambe from 1968 to 1988, as mentioned in this Reason Magazine article, that the level of division in America is most best explained by comparing it to this period, Years of Lead in Italy. Now, this wasn't a civil war per se. There was no massive armies meeting on battlefields and jets and tanks and, ground being taken, none of that. And Italy didn't break up, but it could have. And I want you to see how bad a low intensity conflict can be. Because basically what I'm saying is, don't take comfort in the idea that political division in America could be like the Italian Years of Lead. Don't take comfort in the fact that it wasn't a conventional war. Don't take comfort in the fact that Italy didn't split apart. What you're going to see is that it's pretty damn bad. It may not be the 1860s Civil War, but once you see what a low intensity conflict is and what the Years of Lead in Italy is and what we could potentially go to here in America, you're going to be very terrified of what a potential American Civil War looks like. Even if it means formal armies not meeting on the battlefields and millions of people not being killed, it's going to be horrible and awful. And it is beyond what we saw in the 1960s. And it is very likely could lead to political division in America. So what I'm going to show you in Italy is that even though a lot of people were killed, the Italians still felt the sense of, we're all Italians. In America, if the attacks that happened in the Years of Lead in Italy happened here in America, we would definitely divide. So I'm going to show you what happened in Italy, and Italy stayed together. But if that stuff happened here, we would not still be a cohesive nation state. So while the conclusion with the Years of Lead in Italy is that it did not split up Italy, if that level of violence, even called low intensity, happens here, it's definitely going to equal divorce. So let's get into that. Let me show you what a low intensity conflict looks like so that you have some idea about what's going to be coming possibly to America in the near future. So here is the Italian Years of Lead. Again, 1968 to 1988. And here's the timeline. So initially it was just a student protest, and they occupied the Fiat automobile factory. So a bunch of students took over an entire automobile factory. But then the far left killed the policeman. They, I believe, shot this policeman dead. So that's pretty bad. So imagine if Antifa says, yeah, we killed that cop. Then you had local police arrested 80 or so suspects from the left-wing group, and anarchists initially blamed for the bombing. Let's go here to Piazza Fontana bombing. So they blew up the headquarters of the National Bank National Agriculture Bank. They blew up the National Agriculture Bank in 1969, killing 17 and wounding 88, or about 100 people hurt in that attack. The attack was carried out by the far right, and they were trying to get the far left blamed. So birth of the Red Brigades. Then you started to have student groups who actually started to form quasi-militias. Then you had a neo-fascist group that was formed. So you have the Red Brigades are the communists, and a bunch of students got together and formed them. And then in opposition, later that same year in December, you had the neo-fascist or alt-right groups form together and say, we're going to have our own militia. So this would be the equivalent of Antifa saying we have a formal militia, and then the Patriot, the Proud Boys saying we have a militia too in response to your left militia. So Antifa, as much as the right tries to say they're like a militia, they're not. It's a bunch of people largely disorganized who maybe cause a ruckus, but I wouldn't say they're organized in any sort of military group. You actually had left-wingers form a quasi-military group stationed in the country. And then you had people on the right wing form a quasi-military group or militia stationed in the country. Then we have an amateur a person was assassinated by a far-left group. Then a judge was kidnapped and then killed. So you have individuals being killed, and then now you have this communist group, the Red Brigades, the lefties, kidnapping a judge and then killing that judge later. Then the Italian recipient of civil valor, another police officer was shot dead. Then you had another bombing. Let's see. You had another bombing with a lot of people who got killed. Then you had they set a building, the house of a neo-fascist Italian socialist movement militant, on fire. So the right-wingers attacked the house of a leader of the left wing, burned his house on fire, and killed his 2 sons and burned 8 people alive. Then you have the police department itself was blown up and 45 cops injured. Imagine that. A police office is blown up and 45 cops injured. Then you have another bombing, which killed 8 people and wounded 102. Then you have an outright assassination by the groups where they're targeted assassinating the others. Then you have the alt-right attempted to work with the CIA to cause a coup in Italy. That didn't happen, but they were almost ready to cause a coup in Italy. Then you have a train getting bombed with 12 people killed, 48 others injured. Then you have a general in the military is arrested for being a spy for one of those groups. Then some of the terrorist leaders are actually arrested. That's a good move. Another student was killed. Another student was killed. Another activist was killed. Another police officer was killed. Lawyer killed. A judge was killed. Another policeman was killed. A vice chief and marshal was killed. Policeman killed. Lawyer killed. Another student killed. Activists shot at a bunch of police and then killed another police officer. One of the directors of a serious newspaper was executed. Then even more policemen, judges, marshals, policemen, judge, a teacher, a judge. Here's my favorite. So the lefties kidnapped the prime minister or the highest leader of the Italian government, and then he was killed after a fake trial. Then even more policemen, judge, students, another journalist was executed, another policeman. The lieutenant colonel of Carbonari, that's basically like one of the highest ranking cops in the entire Italian government, was killed. 5 teachers and students were executed in their school. More police. Vice president of the High Council of the Judiciary was killed. Multiple more judges, another journalist. 85 people were killed and 200 wounded in Bologna. You can get the idea. So when we look at the years of Italian-led, there wasn't a civil war. There weren't standing armies. But the prime minister was kidnapped and executed. One of the top-ranking cops, basically like the director of the FBI, was executed. You had about 7 to 10 judges who were executed. About 10 cops were executed. Multiple activists were shot dead. You also had bombings that typically would get about 50 people maimed and 100 people maimed and like 20 to 30 people killed. Well, when you look at a place where multiple judges are shot dead and multiple cops are shot dead, and there's literally 2 rival militias who say they're willing to overthrow the government, and there's attempts to overthrow the government, and the top legal prosecutor in the country is killed, and the top legal elected official is kidnapped and killed, and basically judges and cops can't operate. What that looks like is the Iraq War. Let me show you. The Italian years of lead remind me very much of the Iraq War. The Italian years of lead, really bad time, about from the late 1968, 1980s, 20 years. Here's the Iraq Civil War, 2006 to 2008. The Iraq Civil War was a civil war fought mainly between the Iraqi government, along with American-led coalition forces, and various sectarian and armed groups, mainly Al-Qaeda in Iraq and the Mahdi Army. So Al-Qaeda in Iraq and the Mahdi Army were opposed to each other. So there's really 4 forces. There was the Iraqi government in partnership with the American military. There was Al-Qaeda in Iraq, who was Sunni, and then there was the Mahdi Army, who was Shia. And the Sunni and the Shia hated each other and were constantly going to war. And they did things like try to kill the prime minister, launch a coup, execute judges, execute police, execute leaders of rival groups so that you can't have a functioning nation state, attempt to kill the highest ranking law officers. And basically Iraq was damn near a failed state. So let's see if we can do timeline. Suicide bomber kills 30 and injures 32, double bombing. 9 Americans and 30 insurgents are killed. Let's see here. Suicide bomber kills high-ranking police chief. Successful suicide attack in Mosul, killing 40 people. 2 bombs explode, 2 children. So you can see basically when you're looking at the Italian years of lead, compare them to the Iraq Civil War, 2006 to 2008. And that's the point. Reason Magazine is saying that political division in America is so bad that it's equivalent to the Italian years of lead. I showed you what that looks like. The closest parallel is the basically breakdown of civil society in Baghdad that we all watched. Ethnic groups shooting each other, no law and order, dead bodies in the streets, and basically chaos. That's what they're saying could come to America if a civil war hits here. So take a second to think about that. And if you don't think that's a good idea, then perhaps you should support national divorce, as it would be a way of releasing the stress and the pressure and preventing all that madness and murder. Good point. Quasi-militias and neo-fascist types. America's got that already. Yeah, we're already there. And we already have the parts, so we already have the extreme left Antifa, and we already have the far right, the Patriot Coalition, and the Proud Boys. So we already have these militias here. All we need is a bunch of cops to get shot, a bunch of judges to get shot, basically the director of the FBI to be kidnapped and shot, the president to be kidnapped and shot. And then you would have basically terror of any police to police in this civil war, any judges to prosecute in it. And you'd have a breakdown of law and order as the top elected officials in law and government would begin to feel that they too could be taken out based upon what they say. And you have largely the breakdown of society. Now, in Italy, that didn't get them to divorce, but I can tell you right now, if Antifa assassinated the president, there'd be civil war. And if the Proud Boys assassinated the president, there'd be civil war. And if the Proud Boys assassinated the director of the FBI, there'd be civil war. And if Antifa assassinated the director of this FBI, there'd be civil war. So maybe those things don't equal that in Italy, but they would here. We would never have that level of violence and the system being blown apart and not have rival American groups take it to the next level. There you go. Keeping you informed about the news the media just doesn't want to cover.